I talk for a second?
Excursion into
Coaching. Hey, here we are talking about coaching. I'm Yannick, as always, and I'm here with Andrea Matuz. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
um, it
Hi.
it feels like a conversation between friends, and that's kind of what we chatted about because we've known each other for such a long time. We've spent a lot of time in coaching spaces together, in coaching and supervision spaces. So you're one of those people that I have talked about coaching quite a lot, and we get to see you work in the next coaching lab, which people are listening to this. You can probably still catch on replay as a member, but I just really love your love for coaching and supervision, and particularly your love for marketing and sales. And that part is probably the unusual part, and that's why I think it's a really important conversation that we're going to have today. Before I say a bit more about you, or invite you to say a bit more about you, there's so many coaches out there scared or uncomfortable or anxious or just not connecting to the getting yourself out there part, which somebody told me once that that's the most important part of the work. That's the work that gets you to do the work. And I know so many coaches who love coaching, but they really don't connect with doing the work that lets them do the work, right? And unfortunately, we're not yet living in a world where you can just sign up for a coaching job, or most coaches can't, and then just get given clients, right? So most coaches need to be also entrepreneurs. And that's the conversation I really want to have today. And if we can get one person to fall in love with marketing and sales, I think that would be a fantastic outcome. So, Andrea, you're doing a lot of things. You have a marketing background, if I remember correctly. You've been co-facilitating the coaching cabinet with me for a while. We've met through Animas and the International Center for Coaching Supervision. So we've spent time together in training rooms, and you bring a lot. Not just vibes, but also a lot of experience. You now teach. You also sell for a coaching school, and I just really like the way that you approach the work. I probably don't do any justice to the depth of Andrea and what all you bring to the coaching space. But maybe you want to fill in some of the gaps so people can kind of get a sense and appreciation for where you're talking from.
Yes,
That must have been
you.
the longest intro ever. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to work with you always. I always admire your this unstoppable curiosity, and it never ends. Your curiosity never ends, and this is something that I admire. And we do have in common this passion for coaching and supervision, and it's always a pleasure to work with you. My coaching journey started 11 years ago, and I was I was still working in the corporate world, where a trainer said, Andrea, you have some really strong coaching natural skills. Why don't you build on this? Why don't you take it further? And I did, and I'm really glad I did. Because today I feel like I was born to be a coach and I was born to be a supervisor. It just feels home. It's one of those things that I didn't know coaching existed, and when I found it, it's like, this is it. This is me. And I left the corporate world. I used coaching in the corporate world as part of the various roles that I was doing. And after that, leaving the corporate world, I was part of a big team. I felt like I needed to connect with other people, and I started to network with coaches and attend a lot of events. And as I was also building my independent practice, I realized the importance of marketing and sales, and I've done a digital marketing qualification.
Mm-hmm.
And
so the marketing came after you started coaching?
after the corporate world, yes, and after I started coaching. After,
I
yeah.
thought your corporate job was connected to marketing as well. How
No,
inspiring. You can really get into
no,
this
no.
afterwards. It's not that you need to have a previous career in marketing to really internalize this stuff. That's really inspiring to know.
Yes, because I thought I love numbers and I love people most of all. And but I'm also quite a practical person. I'm also a bit logical, and I need the numbers to back up. And what's the best combination? Well, marketing combined both relationships, people, and numbers. So that's how marketing. And I thought in order for me to be successful, I need to know marketing. And then I fell in love with sales and with the psychology of sales and marketing. And my supervision journey started in 2021. That's where we met. And I realized that, well, building a supervision practice is very similar to building a coaching practice. And yes, that's how I'm
Hmm.
here today, loving to talk about sales, marketing, and coaching and supervision.
Huh. Well, let's dive straight in. You said numbers, right? Numbers and people. Are numbers essential in the marketing process? And perhaps it might be helpful to just kind of differentiate marketing, sales, and the different aspects of the client acquisition process, right? So maybe we can start big picture and then get into the detail. So I asked you a very detailed question, and then I figured let's take a step back and maybe kind of draw out the landscape.
Yeah, so marketing is really concerned with attracting the client to you. Well, marketing can be done by attracting or you reaching out to your clients. So
Hmm.
there's attraction marketing or outbound marketing. But it's really that phase where you become visible to your potential client, and it involves your messaging, your how do you become visible, in what format, where.
Hmm.
And sales happen once you're in a conversation, whether written or verbal, in a conversation with the client.
Once you're connected. And I would say
Yeah.
the closing part is also somewhat separate. I think a lot of people like that's part of the sales process, but it feels a bit distinct. There's the first you make the connection through marketing, you get visible, there's some sort of link, and then when the sales process starts, when you're actually in conversation and you're trying to figure out what kind of solution might help this person, or are we a good fit, is this a good match, am I a good match, or is what I have to offer a good match. But then once you establish that, there's that last part of that sales conversation, which is, okay, how is this actually going to work now in the nitty gritty? Would you make that differentiation too?
They do say that the closing is part of the sales process, because
Right.
if you don't close, you don't have a sale.
Yeah.
So it is part of the sales process. It would be for me,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, let's start with marketing. Unless you want to say anything else about kind of a big picture.
You did mention about numbers,
Yes, I'm
and
curious about that.
yes, it's I'm um, I'm also focused on results, on progress, and numbers for me are sometimes that measure of progress,
Mhm.
of numbers of people that we attract. It's not only about the numbers, but there's always a small component about numbers in terms of the reach. How do many people do you reach out to? How many people do you have conversations with? And it's not only the quantity, but there's also the quality, because you could be speaking with two
Mm.
people and enroll two or 200, and you enroll nobody.
Yeah.
In your
So would you
uh,
say it's essential to keep track of the numbers, or is that kind of a personal choice or your approach to it? I gotta say, not a numbers guy, so I really
mm.
struggle with keeping track of the numbers. That's probably why I'm asking. Is there a way around it? Because it seems so wise to do it, and yet it comes so difficult to me.
Yes, it's very often a reality check. A reality check with perception. Because you might be saying, well, I feel like we're doing so badly. But then when you look at the numbers also say a story. So is my perception very often in my work, in my sales work that I do, checking the numbers tells you a different story to your perception. Because I don't know, I spoke this week with 20 people. 10 of them said a certain story or were going in one direction. But then when I look at the whole month or the whole year, well, actually, these are only 1%. So my perception is, it's like a reality check with, is what I perceive in line with the reality. It can be visits to the website, it can be number of conversations you have, it can be, and can be also accountability or motivator. I want to have 10 coaching conversations or sales conversations. I don't like to use the word sales in coaching, but conversations with potential clients in this week. So that's a very specific number to work towards rather than in general.
Yeah.
And that can be important, especially when you start off.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie, right?
Yeah, when you get the no's, well, it's one no out of 100, or it's one no out of 10, or it can help.
Yeah. I wonder where to go next, right? Because there's so many things we can open up. What would you recommend to someone who struggles to really focus in on the numbers? It's like, again, partly I'm asking this for personal reasons. I needed help with that, so I've kind of outsourced it. But I always thought, it should really be me. Why am I not more interested in looking at the numbers? I need to remind myself to see what worked this week and what didn't. And I often feel that if I were to be more systematic about the whole marketing approach, about outreach, but even the whole language, sales, outreach, marketing, it triggers something in me, and I came a long way, I'm quite embracing it. But still, when I say sales and outreach, like something just wants to step in and say, ugh. And I know a lot of coaches feel like that. So you seem to have fallen in love with it. Some of it might have come naturally, but you also worked with a lot of coaches. I wonder, what would you recommend to someone who's struggling with that sort of resistance?
My motto in life and in business is simplicity. I think simplifying these numbers, this approach to the numbers would be a great approach for you. For example, if you pick your 3 numbers that you need to know in your business in order to achieve what you want to achieve, there could be, I need to speak with X number of clients this week or this month. That means I need to reach out to this number of people. That means my podcast needs to reach X amount of, or need to be published on X amount of channels, or needs to reach X amount of people, for these many to listen, for these many conversations for me to have with potential clients, for example. So if you pick the 3 key numbers that you need to look at, that might not be as overwhelming, because marketing can be very overwhelming, especially when you look at the numbers and what do the numbers mean, and what do the terms mean, and then you get lost.
Yeah.
But if you simplify it, these are the key 3 things, and they are not prospect clients. They are amazing coaches that I want to work with. These are amazing listeners, and these are, whatever else that measure is, then you can translate it to make it feel good for you. I don't like the word sales and marketing, the words in coaching, because I feel like they don't fit the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that. Have you found better terms that, don't trigger the same thing? Like, how would you call it? Like, for example, in coaching, I don't tend to say contract or contracting. I tend to say written agreement or our working agreement or something like that. What would be the marketing sales pendant for that? Have you come across any good
Yes.
terms?
I'm not sure I found them yet, but sales, I would say conversations. It's not quite the end of the conversation because you need a result to that conversation, but it's very often the conversation is around, are we a good fit? So good fit conversations. I'm not sure. I haven't quite found the words yet. And for me, marketing is creating visibility. It's not only, but it's very
more
much.
than visibility, right? It's visibility as the foundation for a connection.
Yes, and it's there's a few more steps, but that's the part that I think most people find challenging. It's becoming visible, and then once you're visible, then how do you attract people to want to talk to you?
Yeah. I remember.
As I said, I didn't find the word yet.
Yeah, I remember Nick Bolton from Animals. He once did this little dance that you won't see when you listen to this, but he was like, kind of a sort of a Macarena thing where he
Yeah.
put his hand out on the one side, his kind of forearm on the one hand, to kind of make a wall, and then there's a wall on the other side. Because most clients don't know that coaches exist, and most coaches know that the client exists. So you just kind of in parallel but not having any connection, and then the hand kind of popped down to make a connection, and that he's like, that's what marketing is. You're building a foundational connection, and then the sales is kind of layered on top of it, and then the other hand came down to make sort of a genie before it nods sort of gesture.
It's like a bridge, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I really appreciated that because it's a bridge in two layers, right? There's a foundational connection underneath. It's like a bridge where underneath there's a train connection, and on top there's the cars driving. But one builds the foundation so that you can actually get into a conversation and open a door. And the other one is layered on top of that foundation, which is the sales process, which is really offering your help, but being quite proactive about it. Right. And there's various degrees of being proactive around it, I think. But like once you have a connection and somebody's resonating with you or your approach or the pain that you speak to or the desire you describe, and then once that door opens, the sales process is really one where it's like, hey, would you like some help with that? I see the doors opening and I have something that could really help you. Do you want to would you like some help? That really, really shifted something for me. That for me, I always perceived it as, if I have a sales conversation, it's like I'm trying to make you give me money. I want to sell something. And that shifted, right? And it shifted quite profoundly, because now when I'm offering my help, now when I can't even say that I'm selling something to you, because it's not really about that for me as I understand sales then, right? It's about, well, I have something and you clearly need something like the thing that I have. So I often I'm not even so attached whether you get coaching or supervision or whatever else with me, unless I feel I'm really the best or only candidate right now. But often I'm just really passionate about somebody getting to work with a coach. And whether that's me or someone else, I distance myself from that because it's not about me. And I really try to get my ego out of the way in that process. And that really, really helped me to get out there and be visible in the first place, because it's not about me. It's about trying to open something up for someone who didn't know that existed before. So whether I'm always happy when happy is maybe different, but I'm happy when somebody works with a different coach that they feel is a better fit. Sometimes I'm not happy because sometimes I really needed the money that month, but I'm generally just really happy if somebody finds the right kind of support. And if they don't work with a coach, I get the sort of salespeople that say, oh, I haven't done a good enough job, because they're not convinced that, this was a good idea. And I often know that it's a good idea for a person to invest in themselves to that degree and get some help and figure things out. I can't give guarantees, but it's always a good idea to explore that, whether that's with me or with someone else. So that really helped me to shift my idea of sales. It's not me selling something, it's me offering my help and helping somebody get something that they really want, or get away from something that they really don't want, or someone, or become someone that they really want to be. I mean, it's such a powerful process. And I think it's now almost an obligation. It's almost a duty to help people understand that there's help available for things that often people feel they need to struggle with in silence or quiet.
And this narrative that you have, this the shift that happened, this narrative that you have comes across to the person in front of you. They feel it. They really feel that Yannick is here to help me find what I need and what's the best thing for me, rather than Yannick trying to convince me that what he has is the best fit or is is what I need.
So how do people break through that? I know for me, it was actually a coach and reading some very bad sales literature. Maybe I say a bit more about that later, but I wonder that you've worked with many people to help them spark this kind of attitude towards sales and marketing. What's worked? I mean, I'm sure it's different for different people, but can you give us a few examples of how somebody might have connected with that sort of shift?
It's very often a process. It's not a quick. It can be a quick or not as quick of a process, but it's very often I find that it comes with deeper rooted beliefs. So that narrative comes from certain experiences, certain relationship with sales, with the term, or with the experience people had in buying something or being sold something. And it's very much to do with the image. What will others say if I sell them? How will I look? How will I come across? So it's working at different levels. One is you with yourself, but it's also your relationship with selling. It's not so much the selling, but what do you do in that space when you have the person in front of you needing something that you have? And really going through what's happening there. Sometimes it's through coaching, through asking questions, but sometimes is sharing, exactly like you shared now, how the shift happened to you and how you see sales or those conversations. I sometimes apply the same method where I share how I see it, and then it's like, well, Andrea, I never looked at it this way. I never thought about the fact that this is not me trying to convince somebody to buy what I have, but it's literally me bringing that curiosity and understanding, are we a good fit? Something else that really helps this conversation when somebody's interested in shall we call it like the, I don't know, the sales, we'll call it sales conversation for now.
Still looking for a better term. If anybody out there has let us know.
Leave a comment below. It's this understanding of, it's not only me trying to see whether what I have is the right fit for the person in front of me, but also, is the person in front of me the right fit for me? Do I want to coach this person? Do I want to, can I help them? Are they the right person for me? So then all of a sudden there's a shift that it's not just me trying to give information, but it's also obtain some information for myself and establish whether this fit is in two ways.
Yeah,
so then
I really want to underline that, because I had an experience once where I went to see a coach, and on the way up to their consulting room, I found myself thinking, oh, I hope they're going to pick me,
Mm,
and that
lovely.
was a very powerful thing to experience because I felt I was working so that I get to work with this coach. And a lot of that is in the marketing of how that coach put himself out there, because there was a story being created that made it seem quite exclusive. In the end, I learned that he would have worked with anybody who gave him the money,
Mhm,
but to
mhm,
have the experience, it seemed a bit inauthentic. And there's a lot of things that I could say about that coach. People who know me might know who it is. But
mhm,
the experience was very, very powerful because I was working hard so that I would, he would say yes to me,
mhm,
and I think it's important that not take that to the extreme, but that there's a mutual checking each other out. Because as in coaching, most people, they want to work at eye level, they want to work in partnership. And in partnership, both partners have to find together. It's not just a service provision where you pay me and I do what you paid me for. It's a partnership, it's a relationship. And if it's a relationship between equals, then I also want to ask some questions about, is this the kind of client that I'm working with? And now in reflection, I sometimes get thrown when clients meet me with that attitude. They're like, well, am I the kind of person that you would like to work with? And in the past, I always thought, maybe they're a bit insecure, or, but maybe it's also something about the brand I've built, not consciously, but like there's a certain story. And then people probably have a similar experience, or at least some people like, oh, I hope I get to work with this person because I'm here and I'm investing. And
mm,
that's a very powerful thing to create from the get-go, that there's a mutual kind of respect and exchange, and that you ask each other questions to kind of qualify the lead, right? Because if a client approaches you, you're hopefully one of a few leads of coaches they might want to work with.
mm,
And ideally, as a coach, you'd also have a number of leads that you ideally select from who you would like to work with the most. Now, most coaches, I think, are not in a position where they have people waiting outside their office, or long waiting lists, right? But
yeah.
that's just a very powerful experience.
Mm. And partnership is such a beautiful word because to me, partnership means we're equals. But in a sales conversation, especially as you say, if you don't have a list of people waiting to have sales conversations with you as a coach, then you might not feel that you're partners in that conversation.
Yeah.
You might really want to build your business and you might really want to get some paying clients, and
Mm.
then this equality is not there.
What do you think about taking the lead in that process, right? Whether you call it a discovery call or a consultation, or, a chemistry, a meeting, or, there's many different ways in which we could describe it. There's actually quite a lot of terms out there, but I've heard a colleague of ours, Caroline Freya Jones, who I really, really like. She runs a coaching success school, um, was coached like 20 years by Steve Chandler. She said, in that first conversation, you want to take the lead. You want to take someone by the hand and guide them through a process. So some people say coaching is leadership, which I have issues with, right? Depending on what kind of leader you are. But there's something that it seems powerful when you someone can be confident that you know what you're doing because you're taking somebody through a process, and you know what questions to ask and what the process is, and you have enough flexibility within that process. But essentially, she says, take your client by the hand and guide them through this process of making a decision that feels right for them. And other coaches say, well, I don't want to set the right example, like a wrong example, by taking the lead, in this process. I want them to experience a coaching partnership from the get-go and also throughout the sales process. So I can see how both ends work, right? But what do you think about the coach taking the lead in that process?
It's a good question. I'm not 100% sure I fully understand what taking the lead means. I assume, of course. But
for example, identifying what the gap is, right? Where do you want to be, or who do you want to be? What do you want to do? What's it like now? And where's the gap? What can we address? Ask somebody to not just talk to you about an ideal outcome of this in 6 months, but invite them into an experiencing the outcome of a successful coaching relationship, right? Imagine Rich Litvin does this, right? Imagine you give me a call like a number of years from now and you say, Coach, it's been X number of years. It couldn't have gone any better. This is amazing. Today I did this and these were my sensations. These thoughts were going through my head. We've created these outcomes. I really, really, really enjoy living my life right now. And the coaching was instrumental in getting me here. It just went way past my expectations. And this is my life right now, right? You're creating an experience. You're creating the experience of the coaching having been successful. And then later on, you can name your price in relation to that experience because that's what you're working towards. And your brain had already made the connections. You've already experienced it as if it was reality for your brain. So that's a very powerful technique. You can guide somebody through a process like that. And that ends in, hey, would you like to experience what you've just experienced? Yeah, I wish I could give you a pill or a shot. But, the best way I know is by having a series of coaching conversations. Do you want to do this? Because then they know what potential they're paying for. There's no guarantees, but that's what we're working towards. That's what we're here for. And then they hear the price in a very different way. So that's what I would say is an example of taking somebody by the hand and guiding them through a process with very pointed questions. You know what the process is. You might open the process up so that people know what they're getting themselves into. Take the uncertainty away, is what many salespeople say, right? Uncertainty is not good for the sales process. Not great to have an existential lens on that, but I get the point, and it works, right? So that's what I'm thinking about by taking someone by the hand and guiding them.
It definitely aligns with what I believe in as part of the process, to take the lead. Yes, in this sense, yes, because the person in front of you, all they know is that I have a problem and I need to solve it, or I have a desire and I want to go towards it. How exactly this is going to happen is show me how, because as long as I can solve it, whether it's called coaching, existential coaching or not, yes, it does need to align with certain things that they believe in and approaches, but they are more concerned about solving the problem or achieving what they want to achieve rather than the rest. And if you guide them through it, then it's amazing, because they don't know how this process should look like. And because of that, definitely I agree. And experiencing, giving a taste of what they are about to embark in is amazing, especially in coaching, supervision, because it's really hard to describe it. It's not as tangible as buying an object or buying other experiences. So and it's so relational. It's such a relational partnership and service that I believe in the experiencing part, for them to make it more tangible and to really understand what they are buying, but also for you to understand who you have in front of you.
Yeah. So let's get back to marketing later, right? But I wonder if you have a certain sales process, something when a new client or prospect, somebody who considers working with you, comes to meet you for the first time. Is there a set process? Is there a number of boxes you need to tick? To what extent are you clear on how that conversation is going to go?
I have a process in the sense that for me, step number one is listen. Is really listen to the person. What do they need? Really understand what's important to them. Why are they here? I never start with this is my offer, this is who I am, it's always the client first, or the potential client first. There's Then there's a taster. I also offer a taster session for people to understand, and for me to understand whether we're a good fit.
Is that a separate session? Is there
Separate.
an initial call to kind of get a sense for it, and then a free tester session?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it's separate. And there's then the process is to really explain how I work and how we would work together. But that comes at a later stage, once we understand what's important to them and what if I can help them. And
so that initial call, how long can I imagine that to be? Because if I really listen and I'm curious about who are they, what brought them here, where do they want to go, who do they want to be? I mean, that can be a very long conversation, right? I imagine yours to be relatively short, or
an hour.
An hour, okay.
It's an hour.
Right, so you sort of give the first, there's an hour of that, then there's a taster session where the coaching kind of begins.
Yes.
And then is there, how do you agree then to work together? What happens after that taster session?
Then there's a written communication. So after the session, there's a bit of a feedback of how did it feel, how did it go, and then there's written communication in terms of we agree next steps at the end of the taster session. Some need to think about it. Some, Andrea, I want this, I'm in, and yes, there's then this.
Why do it in writing? Because my experience is that when I'm doing it in writing, or when I did it in writing, I can't gauge the reaction of that person, right? Maybe they're very aware of your prices already, and they just need to decide on it. Maybe not, right? But if you send them an offer or a structure, there's so much you can misinterpret in writing.
There's a great point. So in the first session, in the discovery call, that's where you talk about pricing, or I talk about pricing. I talk about the taster is just the final decision.
So on that basis, you already kind of agreed on what the structure is, what the process is, and then on that basis, they would say yes to testing it out.
That's right.
Okay. Do people then not continue? I would imagine it to be a bit awkward to then pull out after the first session. I wonder how that would go.
No, sometimes they do. Yeah, sometimes they do. Most decide to continue. It's the taster session helps, but I always ask my clients, so why did you choose to work with me? And 90% of the times the answer is, Andrea, I feel like that you get me, you understand me.
That's the listening
and
part done well.
I decide to work with you. In other sales roles that I have is the not being under pressure to decide.
That plays a big role. Huh?
Of the call is not decide. There's no pressure whatsoever, and I think that's a big part of the.
That is so valuable, and my experience of this has on the receiving end is very memorable, right? Whenever somebody said like, I remember once there was a situation where somebody said, "Look, this is what I can pay you." It wasn't for coaching; it was for something else. He's like, "This is what I can pay you. I know it's not as much as I would like to pay you, or as much as you deserve for this, but it is what it is. So it's either that or we can't work together. So it's completely up to you. I 100% understand if you want to say no. Think about it as long as you want, or maybe not as long as you want. Let me know, right?" And that leaning into someone else's autonomy definitely clicked with me because it's a very high value of mine. But I've noticed it with clients as well. In those situations where genuinely I had a long waiting list. I had the most people sign up when I had long waiting lists. right? And I don't like to pretend I have a long waiting list, even though I know it would work. I did at some point make only like 3, I think 2 afternoons and the morning available for consultations, because I didn't want to have so much consultations, because I didn't have enough capacity to, if all of those people would say yes. Right. So I just limited the amount of consultations I could have. And I've noticed that people were much more ready to sign up, because, I just wasn't available so much. And if you book in a consultation and the next available slot is in 6 weeks, you're really working towards that. I'm sure I lost some clients. I know I lost some clients and just had something time sensitive and they needed to work with someone as soon as possible. But like the big questions, they're going to be around for a little while. And if you see that a coach is not so available, it's just psychology of sales, right? Psychology of marketing. It really does work. And I'm like, oh, I should do this more strategically. But then I have issues with authenticity around this. I don't want to pretend. I don't want to create a fake sense of temporality or a time pressure when there actually isn't. But this leaning into autonomy really, really helped. And if you say, look, it's your decision. Even now, sometimes I would really like to sign up another client this month, but I really committed to this stance of it needs to be your decision, right? Whenever in the sales process there's an element of convincing someone. Many would say that convincing doesn't work, because if you're the one who's convincing someone else, it's not fully their decision, and then you need to spend the next 6 months with them. So if they have a feeling that they've been even on some level coerced into this or influenced in a manipulative way of some sort, I don't think it's a good outcome. And usually those coaching engagements, they either end early or they don't succeed, right? But I can
100%.
understand some coaches who would say, look, I have an obligation to help them see the light. I must convince this person because it's going to be so good for them. In many cases it's true. In some cases it's pretty arrogant. So but that autonomy piece is so important to me, and I've seen it work very well.
I fully agree, and people appreciate it. People appreciate autonomy, and it's important to them. Especially now, I feel like the sales strategies have evolved, some to very aggressive, some to there's so much out there. There's so much so much on offer. People everywhere you're trying to be sold or marketed something. And when there's so much pressure from the outside, it's just refreshing to see when somebody gives you the space to decide and gives you that autonomy and respects your autonomy.
Yeah,
And it really comes across.
I think that's a great segue into marketing. Because partly Seth Godin just came to my mind, the purple cow principle, like we want to capture someone's attention. That's the first thing that we must achieve. Otherwise there cannot be this marketing connection, this potential for a meeting, right? Because first somebody's attention needs to be drawn to you by you making yourself visible or by you approaching someone, right? So Seth Godin says, really recommend people read The Purple Cow. The idea is that someone who's different or something that is different draws attention. And he calls that remarkable, like worthy of making a remark about. And that's really, really helpful when people start talking about, oh, look, a purple cow. It's different. For many people, a cow might be different, but once you see 100 on the side of the road, you're no longer going to make remarks about it. So recently, I've added more package options, more choice to my sales process, the closing process technically. And I have those marketing experts, sales experts sitting on my shoulder. It's like, don't give people too much choice, And I'm still questioning that. But then in a world where everybody gives 3 choices or 1, maybe it's quite refreshing and quite different to have 7. depending on how you navigate that kind of process. So there's certain principles from psychology that make a lot of sense in their work. But then also in a world where everybody does that, especially in marketing, there's so many blueprints now. There's so many established ways of marketing something. I've always felt a bit different, but I'm also now working with a marketing partner, right? And she's coming from a traditional school of marketing, and then we had to find a way to kind of integrate who I am and who she is. And it's been a really interesting process, because some of the systems I could adopt and make them mine in some way, right? Some of the really terrible sales literature that I've read, I'm like, I could see what you're saying there work if I add my own twist to it. If I say it in my words, or if I say that part but not the other part. So there's a way of using marketing in a way, but then established marketing principles that are proven to work, they might not work for you because they're just the same as everybody else. So that really kind of encouraged me to experiment with something that shouldn't work, might work just because it's different, and something different to what all the other coaches out there are doing. Let me pause there. I'm sure you have many thoughts.
I do. Something that I hear is, I still want to do it my way. There's a part of the marketing and the part of the sales that I want to do it my way because it aligns with who I am. And I think that's so important. And this is what I call authenticity, or really being yourself in this process. Because for it to work on long term, you need to do a certain part of it the way that you want. Yes, follow a system, follow a process, but part of it needs to be yours. Because if you only offered one product, would that really be Yannick? I don't know how
Yannick,
long
no.
would that business last for Yannick,
Yannick wouldn't last very long. The business might survive for centuries.
But not Yannick, exactly. So it's your business, especially as coaches. We are very often the business, right? You are the product, you're the service, and the relationship that you create with the person that you partner with. So it's really important to bring yourself not only in the coaching, but in the marketing, in the communication, in the messaging, is to make it sustainable and to make it be you, and to make it for you to enjoy the process, to enjoy, because this is a business, but you also need to have fun in it and to enjoy it, and to feel like it's aligned with where you want to be and who you want to help, because this is so much more than just a business, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is, you're not doing it for the money or for there's something bigger than the business itself that you're working towards.
Yeah, and I think the authenticity part is so important, right? Because I think not very good marketing approach done authentically is going to do a lot more for you and for your clients than you changing yourself or doing a really good marketing system, but in a way that it's
Yes.
clear that it's not really you. But then there's also like very ineffective marketing that feels very authentic to someone and it just doesn't go anywhere. And I guess that's what I want to ask you about, right? Somebody who really authentically doesn't like to be visible, right? Then they still need to find a way to be visible, don't they? Like they need to find a way to connect. But is there a way to connect without being visible? I guess the direct approach would be a possible answer there, but like I'm sure you've come across this, no?
Yes, it is. It is. And very often when we explore, well, I don't like to become visible, it turns out that they don't like to become visible in a certain way. Like, for example, I don't see myself doing videos every day on social media. That's okay. There's other ways of you becoming visible. There's networking, there's writing a book, there's writing blogs, so you can be visible through in different ways, in ways that feel comfortable to you. You might love speaking but don't want to be seen in a video, so then a podcast is the right
or you might
way.
not enjoy public speaking, but it really depends on who the public is.
Exactly. exactly. Or you will have to have a certain, there will be a certain time when you have to step out a bit of that comfort zone. I'm only comfortable with X. You do have to step out a bit out of it. Do you go right to the extreme? No, because it wouldn't be sustainable for you to do that for the next 5, 10, 20, 15 years, how many years you see
Yeah.
yourself running your coaching business. On the other hand, having a coaching business is not for everyone, or having an independent coaching practice
Mhm.
is not for everyone. So maybe for you, being an associate coach or an internal coach is the way forward. So
Yeah.
there are instances when we came to the conclusion that the independent coaching practice is not the way forward.
Yeah, and you're still going to have to get visible in some way to make that sort of job happen, right? How do you get a job is like a similar process of how do you get a client in can be at least. Are
Exactly.
you going to sit there and wait for someone to approach you? Are you going to approach that person? Or what are you going to do to make it more likely that you're going to get approached? Right? And
Mm,
there's people who don't like to be visible at all. They don't want to have an online profile. They don't want to have a website or be on social media at all. And there's still plenty of coaches like that who get lots of work because their way to get visible is to invite people for lunch, catch up with people, ask people, who do you think I should talk to next? Figure out where's the attention of those people that I would love to work with. That's a really, really helpful question, I think, in the marketing process. Where are people's attention? If it's on Instagram, maybe you want to be on Instagram. If it's on LinkedIn, maybe you want to be on LinkedIn. If they go to a local yoga studio or a gym, then that's a good place to either hang out at or place a message of some sort. What do they read? What do they like? What concerts do they go? Might there be influences you can work with, or who do you know who knows someone who might know those people? Are there platforms, are there groups, are there appropriate meetings or events to go to? So I think when we start asking those kind of questions, who am I, what do I resonate with, you can make it in work in a way that you would have much less resistance. But I absolutely agree with you, Andrea. Sometimes I think we just need to get over ourselves, try something out, and learn that it's not actually so bad.
mm. There's so many, you grow so much as a person in this process because it challenges you, it challenges your beliefs, it challenges who you are, it challenges, I think building an independent coaching practice is one of the most difficult businesses to build and to promote, because you're
What do you think
really
makes it more difficult than other businesses?
it's because you're promoting yourself. There's so much of you in this process. It would be so much easier to sell a pen, a pair of shoes, um, something else that's not you. I
Yeah.
spoke to a lot of marketing experts and specialists where somebody was saying, she was a director of marketing. She worked in marketing for 20 years. And then she decided to have a career change in coaching. And she said, it's so difficult for me to promote myself as a coach, despite my 20 years of experience in marketing. And it's exactly because of this, because of all of a sudden you're not promoting a product that's
Yeah.
external to you or a service that's not you, but you're on the line, your ego, your image, your right, your service, and it's one thing to promote the service, but then you need to help that person, you need to deliver,
Ha.
right?
I think
Well,
they knew to deliver, but I think it's a lot about the mindset of that coach then. Because I agree with everything that you're saying, but I also disagree, right? It's, yes, it's about you, and you are in a way selling yourself because you're selling time with you, and it's your personality who shows up in the coaching space. I mean, for some coaches, they really bracket that personality and really try everything to focus in on the client, because it really isn't about me. Like, I think in terms of marketing and sales, and this is a really interesting kind of dilemma I find, because in marketing and sales, it really helps, particularly in marketing, coaches tell their own story. They show up authentically. They let people resonate with who they are. And that's often how coaches get chosen, right? I like this person, or I feel I can trust this person, and like
Yeah.
attracts like. If you wear your values and your beliefs on your sleeves, then people, if people are the same, or similar, they're much more likely to feel connected with you. So in the marketing process, it seems to really help to put yourself out there authentically. When actually in the coaching process, if we work facilitatively, then what some people might call pure coaching, right? Then we really focus in on the person, then it's not about us anymore and what we think and our opinions and our beliefs and our values. It's really to help that person grow and figure things out based on their values and their belief system. So I find that a super interesting contrast, that who
Yes.
I am is a very powerful element in the marketing process, but then I might need to dial it back considerably when the coaching actually starts.
It's also your skill and ability to help that person, to challenge the person's thinking, isn't it? To challenge the person, to help that person to achieve a shift in the way they think, in the way they see themselves or the world. So there is an element, I think, of skill and ability that you bring in that process for that person to go away from that relationship with a
Yeah.
shift, or to be different to when they came into that relationship.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of a supervisor of mine who very clearly says, I I did not choose that way of marketing through my own story and through myself. Like, I really want to connect with the challenges that she describes that people are going through, with the situations that people experience that they want to move away from or towards. That's what she chooses to put out there and let people connect with on that basis. You can describe the experience of feeling stuck or unfulfilled or longing for something different, or feeling you don't have answers. You can describe those situations and experiences. It seems to be more like, it seems to carry more weight when that happens to be also your own experience as a person who then became a coach, right? People tend to respond to that, I think, more than if you just make it about others and not really showing up with your own personal feelings and emotions. So it feels safer when you don't do that. It seems more effective in the marketing process to bring your own self in. But there is a way that you don't need to become this super visible, transparent person that tells a powerful story.
That's right. That's right. And again, it's about communicating in a way that feels right and aligned with you. Because as you said, you might not want to put yourself out there in the same way that others do, and understanding these boundaries and being able to work within those, it's really important, because that's what feels right for you.
Yeah. It brings me back, right? Somebody who doesn't want to have themselves and their be so transparent and visible, they better. It's more effective if you were telling your story, I think, in terms of marketing. But it's much better to not do it if it would come across inauthentic if you were to do it. Right? But then my heart aches a little bit, because I know how powerful it is for people to connect with you. And given that coaching is a relationship based business, you know, the more people kind of open up about what kind of person they are, that allows others to connect with them. On that basis, you actually get the opportunity to have a sales conversation, and figure out whether coaching might be right for them. When for the coaching process, it really doesn't matter that much. And that's what gets me. It seems like coaches if you want to maximize your marketing efforts, it seems that the message is clear. Show up as a person, authentically, transparently, visible, vulnerable, and all of that kind of stuff. And then that will live on the internet forever. That's the most effective way of marketing, it seems, unless there's something else. When a lot of coaches really don't want to do that, but they feel they need to. Is there another way?
I'm one of those people who I'm not all over social media, and I don't have all my vulnerabilities published and my story published. And it's my way of connecting is networking. I love conversations, and the way I connect and why people decide to work with me is through examples and specific help. So somebody is saying, I'm struggling with this, and I help them with that specific question. And they say, well, Andrea, can we work together? Can we continue doing this? So they taste, it's that experience.
Yeah.
It's really experiencing me or having a, same with supervision. Sometimes I help them with one specific question around coaching, and they say, Andrea, how can we work together? Because I really enjoyed this. So that's my way of connecting with clients, by really showing them and for them to experience the situation. And if they decide not to work with me, it's amazing. At least I helped somebody that day. There's still a win-win situation.
Do you have a particular niche then? Because what I've kind of concluded over the years is that a niche is super important if you're the one who's speaking first, right? If you're the one who's posting or blogging or writing a book or putting some advertising out there, placing a message, if you're the one who's talking first in an elevator, pitching your business at a network event, then I think it's really important that you know who you want to work with. But if you listen first, because you get curious first, it seems like it doesn't matter anymore. And those people seem to be most successful without a niche. That, you listen first, all the doors to coaching go open, and there might be very different doors for this person than for the next person. And then you can link your coaching service to the potential outcomes by spending some time going through those doors, exploring that. And that might sound very different when you position coaching in that way after you heard somebody speak and open up for a little while. So do you have a niche, or are you someone who listens first? Is there something wrong with my theory? Because when we go to networking events, how do you show up?
I have a niche, but it's very big, broad. I have three parts to my business. One is the coaching supervision. One is the business coaching, which business coaching tends to be around conversations around niching and selling services, pricing, building the foundation of a coaching business. But I'm trying to move away from that towards more of the niching and sales conversations. And another part of my business and the business coaching part, I work with coaches, only with coaches. Another part of my business that I don't promote, I don't really talk about, but it comes through referrals or through I'm also on certain directories, coaching directories. I seem to attract clients who, mostly leaders or business owners, who want to work on authenticity. That's not what they come with. That's not the symptom, but we end up working on authenticity, on what they call taking off a mask.
Yeah,
so
lots
they
of masks out there.
Certain stage in their business or life where it's about really taking off that mask and living according to their values. They almost like pause, and who do I really want to be in my business? Or who am I really as a leader? Or who am I as a person? And that's this, I want to be me. I don't want to be the leader that the corporate is expecting me to be. I don't want to be the business owner where I drifted into. That's where life took me. That's where opportunities took me. But it wasn't a conscious decision for me to take my business there. And this is that part of my coaching that I don't promote, I don't talk about, but I attract. Um, a lot of conversations, and actually a lot of the conversations with coaches who are building their business end up about this authenticity and who do I want to be in my business, who am I as a coach, who am I as the business owner, is this identity. And if I was to say a niche that, and sometimes people say that you don't choose your niche, the niche chooses you. For me, would be true that if I look back, is this authenticity, is the if we can call it a niche, is the main theme
Yeah.
that shows up in my work.
Yeah, I think most of the time, at least whenever I did work around niching with coaches looking to figure out how they might tackle that, is that at least the foundations of the niche are already there. By thinking about, if I could choose my clients freely, who would I choose? If somebody's been coaching for a little while already, regardless of whether that's 2 or 20 or 200 clients, 2 may be a bit more difficult. But if it's 20, you might already see patterns. What I often ask is, who do you enjoy working with the most? And who seems to get the most from working with you? And there
Yeah.
may or may not be a clear overlap. Right?
Yes.
But those are interesting questions to just get somebody to think about. Maybe there is already a niche. And then do I agree with that? Right? I have coaches who come into coaching with a very vast active network from their previous job, for example, but choose to coach in a very different space. Even though marketing wise, it's a big loss because you're leaving the asset of existing relationships behind, but that somebody just didn't want to work in that space anymore. They wanted to move away. That's why they quit their job and do something different. Yes, it can be very different to re-enter your industry as an external coach rather than as an internal employee. That might change everything. And for some coaches I worked with, it has, right? But some very consciously wanted to step out of that. And that's okay, right? But these questions around what's already there, is there already a foundation? They seem to be very, very effective. And I wondered, are there questions that you often find yourself asking when people start thinking about how they might approach marketing, niching?
It's not a specific question, but the approach itself is very much in line with what you said. In terms, for example, if there was to choose a niche, it's very much around, is there a lived experience, or is there an area of expertise that you're bringing where you would see yourself or would like to work in as a coach? So that can be work experience. I've been, I don't know, a senior leader for X amount of time. I loved the part of my role around helping people to progress in their careers or self-development. And now I want to help other leaders maybe do the same, or managers, or continue that part of the role within the corporate world or something similar. Or it can be a lived experience. I went through a very painful divorce, or I went through some certain big experiences that I learned a lot from, or it was really difficult for me. I want to help others not to go through similar situations. Or it's some sort of a lived experience or working experience that you're bringing, or a passion. You might be really passionate about something outside of work. You read a lot about, or you love, you read a lot about a certain topic, and you're really passionate about that, although you haven't worked in that industry or you haven't experienced it yet, but you find yourself outside of work,
Yeah.
reading so much about it or knowing already so much that you can bring that into your coaching, not necessarily in terms of coaching the client, but the area of interest, the area of
Yeah.
where you market yourself. You have something in common with the client that you're coaching.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, I've met a number of coaches who already identified a niche. I mean, identified, they already have it. They know exactly who they want to help and work with. But it just doesn't seem to be financially viable to do that work. They couldn't sustain themselves. For example, somebody mentioned, I want to work with up and coming artists that are quite young, like young artists, painters,
Mm,
music producers, things like that. And she was very clear. She's been trying to get it, off the ground for like a year or two. And she's like, well, they just don't have either the knowledge in coaching, like the vast majority just don't have any budget for it. And she didn't really, we explored options of, well, where are the artists that are already financially independent? Where
mm,
are the young artists with wealthy parents? Where are the artists? And she's like, well, yeah, but I don't, yes, they kind of fit the niche, but I don't want to be a coach only for those. That
mhm,
there was some ways in which they explored, maybe I could do a bit of a Robin Hood thing and work for high fees for very privileged artists, and then use that and reinvest it into working at half my rate for people that she felt really deserved the support and wouldn't usually have access to. But it was hard work, and she realized that in order to be connected to those artists that would be able to afford VIP rates, willing to finance somebody else perhaps, she would need to network in very different kind of places, and she had no
mhm,
interest in spending time around those people, which was a real dilemma. And in the end she decided to go a different direction. And I remember, I feel it now, I'm still sad, because she had a really admirable vision for her practice and couldn't make it work because of those kind of restrictions.
mm. It is a business at the end of the day, and for you to be able to support your client, you need to be paid for what you're doing. And if there's no money in the niche, or I don't believe that there's no money in the niche, but there's, as you said, there will be one part of that niche that are willing and can pay for your service. But that's a part that's important to understand. Will my audience that I'd like to support, do they have the funds? Are they willing to spend? Is the need that I'm addressing big enough for them to want to invest into coaching? Is the need big enough, and are they willing to invest in it? Do they have the funds to do it? There's also ways around it, like I was thinking maybe offering group coaching, because if everybody pays, like, I don't know, 20 artists pay £10 for an hour of group coaching, or 2 hours of group, £20 for 2 hours of group coaching, for you as a coach, those 2 hours will be paid quite well. So, and £20 for a musician, they might afford it for once a month or once every now and then. So there can be ways of making it work. Or
Mm.
if there isn't a way, then it is time to move on to something else, because, or if you're not aligned with this new way of doing things or other way of doing things, that it is the moving on to another niche, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to sustain that business.
Yeah, that's where the numbers come in, right?
Yes.
It can be quite sobering to realize it's not actually working. What needs to be done differently?
Mm. Yes, it's important because yes, there is a level of flexibility and creativity that you need to bring into building this business. Flexibility in terms of either working with a certain part of the niche, like you said, with those who can afford, or flexibility in moving away to another niche, or creativity doing the group work.
Oh, there was a question. Where did it go?
Flew away.
It flew away. It's something to do around when the numbers. Yeah, exactly. I noticed a trend. Maybe it's a generational thing, but it seems that the younger the coaches get, the less there's willingness to push through a difficult process of establishing a business. Right? I noticed a trend of, well, it's not working. I've been at it for like 3 months. Maybe it's time to switch my niche.
Yes.
Whereas there seems to have been previously more persistence and more willingness to get uncomfortable. There seems to be this path of least resistance kind of thinking. If it doesn't flow naturally, I'm probably in the wrong niche or the wrong business or the wrong country or whatever it is. So I wonder what your thoughts are when a coach finds it difficult to get the business going. How long is too long, and you need to let this go now? You're just operating on sunken cost, or how long is definitely too little? There seems to be a sweet spot somewhere where it's probably important you keep at it for a little bit longer, have patience, make it work, right? Change some things, try it again, just give it some time, whatever it might be. Just stick with it. It's going to work out if you stick with it. Versus now you're just wasting your time. It's very obvious that this isn't working. I wonder how a coach can navigate that sort of decision.
That's a great question, and I think it's different from person to person, because some coaches, new coaches, have already a background they might own other businesses in other industries or areas. So that means that you're bringing some sort of certain entrepreneurial skills into your coaching business. For them, the journey will be very different to somebody who comes from the corporate world. They've never run a business in their life, and they are now setting up as independent coaches. So the journey will be different. The timings will be different. To give a specific answer, I would say 1 year is a good amount of time to give yourself to understand whether to gain some paying clients, and to understand whether is the niche the right niche, is are you enjoying this, is this something that you want to do in the longer term.
1 year with what kind of time investment? Because for somebody, a year next to a full-time job means they have a couple of hours of work a week to work on this. And for somebody else, they just quit their job and they're going full-time and they're trying everything every day to make it work. A year is a very different time.
That's a great question, Yannick. And I was referring to those who either work at their business full-time or part-time, at least part-time.
Part-time
with
meaning?
Meaning they have another job that can bring some income, but it can be like a few days a week part-time, like working a few days in something else, or having a stable income a few days.
So part-time, sort of half-time, because it's not just part-time. I have 2 hours on a Monday and an hour on a Friday afternoon. It's more like, no, I'm putting some substantial work into this. That's
right. Next to a full-time job, I don't have a number of years next to a full-time job, because that could look very, very differently. And we're talking here about an independent coaching practice, not using coaching as part of your current role, or as associate coach, or as internal coach. Those are different stories.
And I'm curious about taking a snapshot of what do I bring to the table? Because in my experience, the reason I'm asking is because a lot of people, I talk to a lot of coaches who come in and they're considering becoming coaches, or they've done some training. They're now trying to figure out, how might they get this business rolling. What I have my ear out tends to be, what are they bringing into this already, right? Have they already, are they, do they have good relationship skills, for example? Do they have good coaching skills? Do they have good marketing skills or sales skills or closing skills already? What about their network? Is there an existing network that they could tap into? Do they find it easy to be visible, or does that, is that really, really difficult? Super introvert or super extrovert, their level of understanding technology or having built websites before, or, a previous entrepreneurial career of some sort. So there's certain factors that seem to make it a big mediator for coaching business success. When you already bring some things to the table. Would you add anything to the kind of few bits that I've thrown in there?
I would say that the approach, just the thought that I'm building the coaching business on something that I already have, it's a great starting point, because many of my conversations with clients are around this, and they thought, well, Andrea, I never thought about it, because they think, because they are newly qualified coaches, especially the newly qualified coaches, it's like, well, I'm new in this. Well, you're new to coaching, but not to life in general or business in general, and you're bringing some really valuable skills, exactly like you said, the networking or the certain skills that you might already have and it can be different from person to person. Nothing comes to mind that you haven't mentioned already that I think it's critical. But I did speak recently to somebody who was so worried about building their business, and it turned out that actually they work in marketing, and their role involved a lot of the for a startup. And in startups, you often end up doing much more than a very specialized, narrow role. So you see the whole very often. And they just didn't connect the two. The fact that I could use all these knowledge and experience into this new thing, because it was new, it was like, well, this must be done differently.
Yeah, people have so much already that they're bringing to the table, and because it's what they have, so it seems natural. But having somebody else say, "Oh, you're bringing this and this and this and this," you actually have a really good foundation to, get this going successfully. And people's faces light up when you just offer that sort of observation.
Yes.
I didn't make you have it. I just told you what I see, and they're like, "Oh," and then the energy starts. It's very cool to see.
This is exactly it. It's really looking at what you already have, you're already bringing, and building on top. Because when somebody decides to train as a coach, you're very often building on very natural skills that you have. There's I very often hear this desire of developing themselves for people and desire to help others. This is what drives very often people to want to train as coaches, or they have some skills or some feedback that they received, or people very often come to me to help them with difficult situations in life or at work. They tend to come to me. So these are all things that you're already bringing and building on. And I'm not quite sure why I mentioned this, but it was connected to something you said. But the idea is you're not starting from scratch.
Yeah, true.
And you've probably been a coach informally for many years before you started to train as a coach. Because the other thing that we didn't talk about, and I think it's important to mention, is your confidence as a coach in your
I'm just literally
skills.
writing down confidence right now, because I'm like, oh, we can't leave the conversation without bringing that up.
And this is a critical part, isn't it? Because you're promoting something that, if you're not confident in what you're promoting, meaning your confidence in your skills as a coach, is really difficult to make that thing visible or
Yeah, or
make your
to build the kind of connection that you want to build, because you want to build good resonance, right? And if you come across not confident in what you're opening up there, whether it's you or your coaching or an experience, like
mm,
that's difficult to trust, and you want to have a sense of trust in someone before you reach out and have a conversation with them, right? And it's okay to question and to be critical and to view the world as very complex, which is something I struggled with, right?
yes.
Complexity can be mistaken for a lack of confidence, because
Mm,
if like it's in some ways I envy the people who can offer something very simple very confidently. And I'm like,
mm,
but are you just ignorant, or are you delusional, or do you not want to see the complexity of the world? Or am I not seeing something and this is actually much more simple than I thought? You know,
mm,
I think for
mm,
someone who appreciates complexity, it's much harder to speak simply confidently. And
yeah.
I'd like to believe that over the years, I've learned to speak confidently about complexity, because it's up to the people to make a choice. But when it comes to sales and marketing, I'm sometimes envious of the people who have quite a simple worldview and quite a narrow one, and they can genuinely, authentically speak with confidence and offer simple solutions.
Mm,
And as it doesn't get much simpler, then we're going to have, a series of conversations to help you figure
mm,
something out. So you can
mm,
keep things simple and confident. But I see a lot of coaches struggle with that kind of confidence, because they cannot make guarantees. I cannot. You need to do the work. The client needs to do the work. I have no control over the client. I can influence them, but often I don't want to. Right?
mm,
Coaches already by nature influence just by showing up in their way of being. But
mm.
I cannot make any guarantees that what you want is what you're going to get when you buy into this coaching relationship. And that's
And
what I think
clients
holds a lot
often,
of coaches back from speaking confidently about their services, because we don't have any control over the outcomes.
mm, and clients often have this expectation
Yes.
for guarantees for, and it's very much about that initial discussion and agreement and understanding what is coaching, what can I offer, what I can, and it's again the fit. Does this person understand how much of this relationship is their responsibility and
Yeah.
how much isn't, and
Yeah.
what each of the two partners, what role we play
Yeah. Yeah. They need
in.
to believe that this is something that will help them. Right. But
Mm,
at the same time, the coach needs to not take on that pressure in order to be able to do their best work. And that's a tricky line to navigate, because when a coach creates a story through their marketing that this is going to radically change your life, it is much more
mm,
likely that it will. And we know that from placebo research. We know that from there's evidence out there, and many people tell the tales. Right? If you create the kind of confidence that something is gonna do something, it's much more likely that it will, even though it's a sugar pill or a coach with relatively little skills, very
yes.
little training, and don't really know what they're doing. If a
Mm,
client comes in convinced that this will radically change their life, they're much more likely to radically change their life, because that plays into the hands of coaches. I- You're not the one who's doing the work. I mean, you are in partnership, you are in conversation, you are in relationship. But as a coach, to deliver incredibly good results, to deliver decent results, let's tone it down a bit, right? As a
mm,
coach, to deliver decent results, you just have to not be in your client's way of doing that,
mm,
if they already tell themselves that this will be really helpful. If they tell themselves that this is probably not going to work, I think the coach needs to work a lot harder. They need to be a much better coach in order to be able to, help that person achieve what they want to achieve. But that's why marketing stories are so powerful and so important. And that's why I kind of toned and quietened down the part of me that judges other people's marketing if they put a bit too much cream on their tacos, as my wife's family say in Mexico. Because if you tell a story that promises, but paints a picture of maybe a few genuine clients but certainly not all your clients are going to achieve those kind of radical changes in their life. It's not, I'm like, yeah, but you can't, that's too much. Like, but at the same time, I now understand that if marketing tells that kind of story and creates that kind of narrative, people are much more likely to get it. So then I was like ethically challenged about marketing creating stories. And again, Seth Godin really opened my mind in many ways. I remember this part about this wine glass manufacturer. I keep forgetting. I think it's Riedel. They're just really, really expensive glasses. And if you use a very expensive glass or a not very expensive glass, but it's still a glass, and you have people do blind experiments on which glass the same wine tastes better out of, if they don't know the glass, it tastes the same, or they can't tell the difference between a very good wine or a very bad wine, not very bad, but a decent wine and an extremely good wine. Most people can't tell the difference. But if you tell them this glass costs $200 per glass, and we've proven that it makes the wine taste better because of the air circulation, and it's just, you're creating a story. It's not true. Yes. But because you told the story, it now is true, and people are like, I can taste it. Wine tastes so much better. When if they would have done a blind experiment, they wouldn't have said that. So it's not true, but it's also true, and that really fucked with my head when I found myself judging, investing so much in creating a story with your marketing, a story that essentially isn't true, but because you've created it, it becomes true, or at least closer to the truth. And so now I'm sitting there looking at some of those coaches who spent so much effort and money and resources into creating this story of how when people come to them, their life will change and ignite, and because it makes it more likely to be true. And then there's also those who come with extremely high expectations, and then they're probably more impressed than when they came in with, and that's a real ethical problem. And I still have problems with people who create those kind of stories or those kind of expectations. But I also now get it through a psychological evidence-based placebo lens.
I fully agree, and Yannick, this is where authenticity, ethics come into discussion, values. And I was thinking as you were saying, but whose ethics? Is it my ethics? Is it the other coaches who does the marketing ethics? Whose ethics? Is it the client's ethics?
Yeah.
So there is whatever you feel. So I think as a coach, you need to promote yourself and do the marketing your way, in the sense, or part of the marketing your way, in the sense that it needs to align with your values, your ethics, who you are as a person, to be able to confidently promote your service as a coach. Otherwise, it won't be sustainable.
That's why the best way is a conversation. There's no blueprint of how to do it, but because it's best done in an authentic way, because you are inviting people into a relationship with you, right? And if they meet someone who's very different to the person who sold them the Hoover, right? If that person then also becomes the Hoover, and all of a sudden they're quite different to what the expectation is, that's not going to be a good foundation to work with. That's why, in coaching, it's so important to show up authentic in your marketing, much more important than I think in any non-relationship based business. And that's tricky. But then again, it comes back to that point from earlier. It's better to do something that is less effective on paper, but do it authentically, than to lean into an existing, proven, successful blueprint of marketing when it's not actually resonating with you. Now, and I can encourage people from personal experience to experiment and get out of your comfort zone and try some things out. We recently launched an online course and really tried out a system. And I've been resistant to using a launch system for courses for ages. I wanted nothing. I really didn't want to send like 30 emails out in a week. And in the end, I committed to giving that a shot. There was some risks and I was concerned. And in the end, the feedback seemed really good. At least the feedback I got. Maybe there's feedback out there if you've been very annoyed by what came out during marketing the Introduction to Existential Coaching course. Let me know. I would like to work with that. But it really helped because it created something that I can replicate with some tweaks, right? It created it. I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for my marketing partner really encouraging me and saying, "Hey, look, if we do the same thing if we do the thing you're comfortable with, it's just not going to do much, and you already know that because that's how you launched your last 2 courses. You're going to break even, and then it's just going to be around, and it's not worth all the effort you put into it. So it deserves to do things differently." And so really checking that out and see how that sits. And I'm like, actually, it worked. We reached our target, and that was really helpful. We didn't set a super high target, but we did set a target and we reached it. So I'm like, oh, okay. And then the feedback I got was, yeah, we're aware this is marketing, right? We're not just gonna unsubscribe from your mailing list because in 1 week, with an announcement that you're going to do this, you sent us lots of emails about this course, and it was actually well done and well written. I'm like, oh, maybe there was a lot of story in my head. And I think a lot of coaches out there need to challenge the stories in their heads. And I guess that's what you do for a living.
Yes, and I think, Yannick, you made a great point about trying out things, because marketing is such a trial and error exercise. To my surprise, I thought I'm going to go on this digital marketing course and I'm going to learn all the secrets of how to do marketing. And I know now I have the system,
now you have the blueprint.
Yes, that's it. And I just replicate it and here it is. But then I learned that the system and the blueprint is different for every person, for every business, and you don't know, there's no right way or wrong way of doing things. You need to test it out for your niche, for the people that you want to reach, for yourself, because if there was a blueprint, if there was a one way of doing things, everybody would do it and would be successful. But there isn't. So if something doesn't work, don't think that, oh, I'm not doing the right thing, or just try something else and continue, and don't expect for somebody to give you the answer and this is what you should do with your marketing and you'll be successful at it. That's why it takes time to build a coaching business and any business. Right, because you need to figure out what's the marketing and what's the strategy that works for your business and for you.
Yeah, so the only thing that I think people shouldn't do is to not seek conversations, because the foundational question seems to be, how can I have more conversations? And how can I open the door into more conversations? Do I knock on doors to have conversations actively, or do I put the right things out there so people knock on mine? Am I around people so conversations just happen? Or what do I need to do to create that? And there's a million different ways in which you can invite people into conversations or make it more likely that they organically happen. But the only thing to avoid is to hide and not be around people, or not make it easy for people to seek a conversation with you. Because I don't know any other way of coaching rather than to have more conversations. I think we're not quite there in the industry at the moment in 2024, where enough people know what coaching is and they just kind of go on Google and they Google coaches and they book in consultations and they work with them. It tends to be through a conversation. And even if they find your website is a way to invite somebody into a conversation. They need to have trust, or you need to speak to their pain or their desire. Like, something needs to happen. You needed to have been active in some way or another. There's a way of doing this, that you set up the right system and then wait for people to knock on your door. But again, you've actively created those opportunities. That's the question I think everybody needs to think about. How can I create more conversation or make it more likely that those conversations are happening?
100%, because even if through a conversation, even if the person didn't sign up with you, you will learn a huge amount about the person that you have in front of you. What are their needs? What are their wants? How they make the decision? What works? What doesn't? and you learn about either your market or this particular person. There's always something that you can take away and learn from that conversation. And Yannick, I don't know, I'm pretty sure this happened to you as well, but how many times I had conversations with somebody and 1 year later they didn't sign up, 1 year later they reached out, Andrea, I'm now ready to work with you.
Happens a lot.
It doesn't mean that the conversation doesn't, if they don't sign up straight away, that it didn't leave something with them. Or I have people who tell me they still haven't signed up with me, but they say that conversation, Andrea, made such a big difference for me.
Yeah, now we could open another whole can of worms around what does a no mean to you? What different kind of no's are there? What's your relationship with rejection, authenticity, uncertainty? I mean, there's a lot of psychological stuff, a lot of limiting beliefs that are in the way, a lot of stories and narratives people have created that really keep them from engaging in good marketing. But we don't have time to open the door. Maybe we continue this conversation. I mean, I know we continue this conversation in another place because we'll see each other in the coaching cabinet once a month. But maybe we'll deepen that as part of another episode or so. But I wanted to do, just to close off, usually I ask a number of quick fire questions, which is unfair because they're really complex questions. And so answer them in a quick fire way, it's difficult. But there's two, I reduced this to two. The first one is, are there any, when you think about marketing and sales done well, is there any literature or any people, YouTube channels, is there something you would recommend people engage with to open doors? Maybe something that you found really helpful, or maybe something you found a lot of your clients find helpful. If you name 2 or 3, you can give some context if you want to, but try to keep it short just because time is running out. What would you recommend?
Steve Chandler and Rich Litwin's approach to sales and marketing ish, it's something that I would recommend because of the focus on the conversation.
The Prosperous Coach is probably the best way to start that. But I know
Prosperous
Rich,
Coach.
very least, updated some of his thinking, and Steve Chandler keeps writing books. So I'm sure there's some new ideas in there. The Prosperous Coach is now, 10, 15 years old?
Yes, around 15, I guess, from what I know. Yes, there is another book on marketing, but I forgot the name of the book and the author. I don't have it with me. I can send it to you, and it's really good. I'll send it to you. I'm really sorry.
Put
I'm
it
not
in the show notes. No worries.
Yes, with names.
Anything
Was
else?
there?
Well, no, I'm happy to move on. Shall I? Or is there something else you want to point people
Yeah,
to?
no, I think that's it. It's very my work with sales and marketing is very intuitive and very psychological based. I'm very much focused on very much. It's yeah. I'll send the name of this.
Yeah,
It's
it's still
like
there,
marketing.
searching the back of the mind.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really sorry because it's such a good book.
In a recent podcast, I couldn't remember Sid's name, our other cabinet facilitator. And I was talking about this resonant coach who was in the coaching lab, who's also the cabinet facilitator, and Sid's name just didn't come up. Sid, I mean, it was just gone. I'm like, no way, this is so weird. Anyway,
Well, the other book is around persuading people to do things. So it's persuasion, and it's not that marketing directly, but it's very much linked, and it's a lot of psychological elements in there that I think coaches will find both exciting to read about, but also useful.
I think I still have a recording somewhere from a pub psychology session about the psychology of influence and persuasion.
Interesting.
If I get enough emails, I will try and dig it up and maybe get it out there. But yes, last question. If you could have the undivided attention of a person or a group of people, including the whole world, and you had their undivided attention for a minute, whether you take over someone's screen or just project yourself into their heads, or it might be a billboard on the side of the road if that person is driving really, really slowly. What would you tell them and why?
Is it a one phrase or a topic that I would talk about?
You could talk to them for a minute. It could be a phrase. But let us know which group of people or the whole world or which person it would be.
Coaches, 100%. Coaches. And we would talk about the two key things that I'm really interested in, I could talk a lot about, is the coaching skill, so supervision type of conversations, and the sales conversations around selling your coaching services.
Yeah. Any particular message you would put in there or question for people to consider? I mean, I hear this is a conversation, but that's a lot of conversations that you would have to have.
Yeah. Is you can do this, and you can be yourself by by building your coaching practice, and you can be a practicing coach.
I love that. Awesome. Andrea, where can people find you? If somebody wanted to step closer into your sphere, learn more from you, perhaps work with you, where would you send people?
LinkedIn is the best place to find me, and Andrea Matuz, if you search my name. I would love to connect through LinkedIn.
Awesome. Andrea, I've got lots left, but right now I'm just going to say thank you so much for spending this time with me. And I know plenty of people will have benefited from that. Last time in the cabinet, we just had someone saying, "Oh, you just kind of casually thrown out a nugget last time I came, and it's really changed my practice." Or something around, look at the last 100 clients you worked with and really look at the numbers and who are they and what do they want and how do they fit. And there's probably a niche in there. And it really changed her relationship with her business, like profoundly. She came glowing just like 3 months after. So I'm hoping that we could create that for some of you out there. If that is you, let us know, right? Where it's nice to put things out there. It's extra nice when things resonate. So what I often say is, if any of this resonated, make it swing. We'd love to hear from you. Let Andrea know. Let me know. Share some insights with your coaching colleagues. This is abundance. We don't get poorer by sharing our insights and knowledge. So I do think we need more coaches, not less, because there's plenty of people who could really benefit from this. And I know you believe in that too. So, Andrea, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Yannick.